Hello, and welcome to Up Close and Personal with Inelia Benz. I'm your host, Helene Lipson. For our listeners not yet acquainted with Inelia, she was born in Chile and entered this world directly from source energy without any karmic debt, and she came into this life with a sense of knowingness on a pure mission. Her soul's purpose is to raise the vibrational level of the planet to a critical point that will allow a transitioning into the new paradigm, the new level of awareness for everything, for the planet and everything in it, every rock, every insect, every person. And to do that job, Inelia is a spiritual catalyst, awakening those asleep, helping those already aware to reach a higher vibrational level. And she's even traveled to different geographical areas in various ways for the sake of cleansing it so that the vibration can come through properly. Peer pressure is the influence exerted by a peer group encouraging individuals to change their attitudes, values, or behaviors in order to conform to group norms. Today, on Up Close and Personal with Inelia Benz, we will explore the impact peer pressure has had on Inelia and the personal journey she's taken to be true to her mission. Hello, Inelia.
Good morning.
Hi. Again, so wonderful to speak with you. And we have a fascinating show today. We're talking about peer pressure, or the social pressures that may have influenced you in your life. Now, whether that pressure came from family of origin, friends, social pressures, spouses, I'd like to know, have you ever felt pressure or the need to please others to the extent where it impacted your ability to make the best possible choices for yourself?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's one of the biggest stumbling blocks I've had in my life, actually. It's huge. I mean, where to begin? Yeah, even, gosh, if we do it at a chronological order, even when I was really tiny, there was an enormous amount of pressure to be normal, right? And also within my own family to really not, there was a pressure to kind of not to, for people not to notice where I was or and stuff like that. And there was the very aggressive type of teaching that anything that came through my mouth that wasn't acceptable or part of the norm in the human knowledge base was shut down really, really quickly. I would be called stupid or mad or crazy or simply told to shut up. Yeah, that's a big one. But I'm thinking some of the biggest ones for me personally were the cultural belief from South America. And we did talk about this a little bit in a previous episode, in the relationships one, I think, that to be happy, one had to find the perfect mate, and then one would be happily ever after, right? And that was hammered into me from a very, very small, tiny age. And also through all these, like the fairy tales, Cinderella and Snow White and everybody else that taught this thing, and over and over and over again. And when things went, my very young life was not a good place to be. It was very violent and full of different levels of abuse. And I would always think, oh, it's okay, when I grow up, I'm going to meet somebody, get married, and I'll be happy forever after, because it really went in. That was one of the biggest programs, peer pressured programs that I was injected with. And of course, it was an absolute disaster because when I grew up and I carried the plan through, it completely backfired. And I left myself wide open to all sorts of different attacks at a psychic level, at an energetic level, and all sorts of things. and it debilitated me for many, many years. It lowered my vibration. It stopped me from doing things that I could have been doing many years ago. I wasn't able to because I was so defeated, really, at an energetic level that I couldn't hardly do anything at all. So yeah, that would be the biggest one, I think.
Now you're talking about your family of origin. You're also possibly talking about your married life.
Yeah, both, yes.
And so if you were to be true to yourself at that time, in other words, there were pieces of you, because of pressure to be what you were expected to be, you weren't necessarily true to yourself, is what I'm hearing you say. What is it that you would have done? Would you have just done this mission earlier?
Absolutely. I mean, this could have been started many, many years ago. Not necessarily the public level, although probably would have started earlier if I'd, been seen to be ready earlier. But I mean, I never actually stopped doing things. I was always putting information out there and helping individuals throughout my life, even when I was a tiny child. But it was at a level that was so much lower than could have been done, right? So it wasn't as effective. It would have had, say, for example, a 2% effectiveness level when it could have been 100%, right?
Is this a different time now, too? I mean, I'm talking about the collective, where it's more okay these days to live your life purpose than perhaps it was to live your life purpose in the 60s or the 70s.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant. It's like peer pressure will attack you and grab you no matter what decade you're talking about, right? Now, these days, it could be something completely different, but it can veer us away from our mission in a big way.
It's very tempting, Inelia, to do what other people want. It's the easier route. There's less oppression, and you're not mocked. Yeah. And you don't feel alone. So what advice would you give to our listeners from things that you've learned?
Well, basically, my biggest lesson was that even if everybody around you is telling you that the sky is green, and you look at it and you see that it's blue, stick to your guns. Right? Don't allow that pressure, especially if people say, oh, what do you know? You've never been here before. What do you know? You've never been incarnated before. What do you know? You're not from this planet. It's like, it doesn't matter. If you see it as blue, stick to your guns and don't, start calling it green even though you see it as blue. Mm-hmm. Because that's when bad things start happening. That's when things go a little bit wrong.
I'm interested in knowing about early experiences with even your teenage years, your girlfriends. I mean, were you always your own person?
As a teenager, definitely the programming that was happening when I was a teenager was really mild, because on the one hand I was moving quite a bit from country to country, but also I had already reached a level where I knew that programming was happening, and I did refuse a lot of it, but unfortunately the happily ever after never left me as a teenager either. And it was very distracting, right? It distracted me quite a lot. But from doing what other people were doing, no, I never actually experienced a level of peer pressure that one would think perhaps as normal. Although people around me were drinking and were taking drugs and things, I knew 100% that I wasn't going to go down that road. So, yeah, I did try alcohol a couple of times as a teenager, literally, right? A couple of times as a teenager. The drugs, it was like a complete and utter no. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to be doing that. And it was a knowing, and nothing broke that. I never took drugs as a teenager. But yeah, and also the going out and things. But yeah, I used to go out and sneak into discotheques and things when I was still like 14 or 15, and they were like over 18 discotheques, and I'd be able to get away with it because, I was foreign and in England, and it's like they can't tell what age foreign people are, or they couldn't at the time, right? Nowadays they can, but at the time they couldn't, because there was hardly any foreign people where I lived at the time.
Interesting. Now, in your life now, do you ever feel the need to compromise some of your ideas or ideals or your mission to make other people happy or please them? Does this ever come up for you now?
No, I don't do things to please others. If others, really, the mission now, it really is to raise the vibrational level of the planet, and everything that I do, whether it's a quote personal level unquote or at a public level, it's all to do with becoming more efficient at making this happen for all of us. So if something doesn't please an individual or a group of people, that's their problem. They're going to have to deal with it, because I'm not going to spend the time or energy or waste time or energy in trying to make them see or please them when there are thousands of other people who get it, you know. I'd rather spend the time with those thousands of people who get it and are going to do the work, rather than a few disgruntled individuals, you know, who are trying to make me see that they're not happy.
We're going to find that more people are holding true to their vision or their passion or their life purpose. I mean, okay, as a psychic astrologer, I run into a lot of people that either have arranged marriages that they're wondering about, and they can't go against their family. So for cultural reasons, they were placed in this. We have a lot of people I've seen in my travels that had to be a lawyer because the father was a lawyer. It takes a lot of strength to rise above or to leave what other people have arranged for you, especially when they're bound for cultural reasons. So I'm asking, what kind of advice would you give to people that have come into a life that is already pre-planned for them and they have a knowingness that that isn't right?
The first thing that I would suggest they do is to process the fear around not doing it. So the fear that nobody will speak to them again, the fear that if they don't marry this person, they'll never be married, and that's bad. The fear of being rejected and not loved. To process that fear and spend time, you know, maybe months processing that fear. And then that will clear up, you know, it'll be good.
When people are criticized or chastised for their decisions, they're very likely to sway away from what they might have a knowingness that they're supposed to do. How could one cope with the criticism, especially from loved ones? It's more than even just processing the fear of what's going to happen to them, but the criticism, if it's ongoing, how can people cope with this when they still have to have a connection to either their family of origin that's disappointed in them, or the spouse that they're married to and they have children, or the boss at the job that they have? Because you could even be coerced in work because you are fearful that you won't be able to financially make it. And so there's a lot of times that we go against what we know is right in our hearts. How does one cope on an ongoing basis? Because we can't say leave that job or leave those parents or break this marriage up.
Well, again, we do start by processing the fear around it. However, we can move on and also really not engage within the criticism. The first thing that happens normally when a person is criticized is that they defend themselves, right? And by defending themselves, they're actually adding fuel to that criticism. They're adding it in their own mind or in their own energy field through anger and through all sorts of things. And basically, it's an ego reaction to defend oneself. You know, somebody calls you a name or calls you or whatever, accuses you of doing something, and you immediately start telling them, no, I did not, or I'm not that, or whatever. That uses up a lot of energy and effort. I would say that if the person were to step back and either not respond at an emotional or verbal manner to the person criticizing and simply acknowledge the fact that the other person is feeling that way and that the reality for the other person is real for them, that will help a lot in stopping us from falling into the peer pressure of being criticized and also engaging in that battle. Because if you spend all that energy that you're spending defending yourself, doing whatever it is that you know you have to do instead, that's a lot of energy.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, and yeah, it's like for parents, if it's a parent or a spouse or whatever, try it today. It's like instead of defending yourself or attacking the other person for their views, simply nod your head and understand what you're saying and move away. It's like try it and see what happens.
It would mean that person would have to let go of their own need to defend themselves.
Exactly.
And just accept themselves and what they want to do and move along, which is right. Excellent advice.
Right.
Excellent advice.
And also if it's a parent or somebody who actually loves you, just hug them and say, I know you love me, rather than defend yourself. Right? I know you love me. And that's it. That's going to be your response.
The toughest thing as far as peer pressure, I know I was in a job that was not a vibrational match for me. I had to actually recruit people to get into colleges, which would mean to line them up with debt, and I also was praised when I could bring in a large number of people, even if it wasn't a vibrational match for them to be in school. And it was very off, and that this kind of pressure and fear was very consuming, and I would fit this into a peer pressure type of thing, because it's peer pressure or general pressure to do something that you're not aligned with because of fear that you wouldn't have enough money. It forces people to compromise themselves, and we see that so often. My story is not so uncommon.
Yeah, but you're not there right now, are you? You're not doing that anymore.
No, I'm not.
Exactly. And are you starving? Are you starving and homeless?
No, actually, I'm doing better now.
Exactly. So it's not a matter of, okay, leave your job today, It's something that you have to work through. And yes, the fear, you have to process that first. But as soon as you do that and you start responding differently, both to the emotions that it brings up and also to the job requirements, things will naturally, organically evolve to support you in a much better way.
It happened. It actually literally happened when I took that leap of faith over fear. And this was a very interesting conversation today. Do you have anything you'd like to share with our listeners on a closing note?
Always be true to yourself. Listen and be impeccable in everything that you can possibly do, think, any actions you take, everything that you speak, right? Every time you speak, if it's not a positive thing, don't say it. Process it instead, right? And that will allow you both to stop being affected by peer pressure from others, because you're responding to those emotions immediately at a processing level in your field of emotional energy. And also to not do it to others, so you don't peer pressure others into doing something that maybe their higher self really knows they shouldn't be doing right now.
Well, thank you so much. Fascinating. And thank you again, Inelia, for another wonderful episode of Up Close and Personal. This is your host, Elaine Lipson. Till we meet again on Up Close and Personal with Inelia Benz, we send our love, light, and blessings to all. Namaste.